Landrover Discovery1. Ever thought about improving the handling and the looks of your Discovery? Well, as you know, the wheel choices are pretty limiting on a Discovery because it's got the old style wide nut and bolt pattern called the PCD, which is basically this pattern of nuts here. So the choice of alloys is quite limited to one or two choices, what you see here, another rather similar one. This car has already got the slightly non-standard bigger tyres, which at the time I quite fancied having because of the taller look. These are long trail tyres as well by BF Goodrich, so last quite a long time. And one of the biggest sizes you can fit on the Discovery at 255 by 70/16. But I'm getting a little bit fed up with the slightly roly-poly feel that these tyres, being very tall tyres, that these tyres actually give to the handling of the Discovery. So today we're going to go over radically changing the wheel and tyre package on this car to the much more modern, you'll see on the side, Discovery 3 tyres and wheels, which from a distance at least, you can see only the front one is fitted, look rather attractive I think. Much more road based tyre, much thinner profile, and a well, I say a wider tyre. They have more grip on the road because it's still 255, but being a lower profile it's a much flatter tyre, and you see down here is has much wider contact with the road than the previous long trail BF Goodrich ones. So the difficulty of course in changing the tyres is that you have to change the bolt pattern. This bolt pattern and the bolts themselves are smaller than on the Discovery one, so for that we fit an adapter which is readily available from various companies on eBay. You pay between £200 and £300, and those adapters allow your Defender or Discovery 1 to be fitted with Discovery 2 wheels. For Discovery 3 and Ranger Rover Sport wheels you need also an additional very thin spigot ring, which we can see over here. I just opened the garage. So these little spigot rings go into the adapters. Let's pick out another adapter, see what sort of adapters we need to use. Right, here we go. So that obviously goes on to the existing either Defender or Discovery hub. The bolts come through these holes. You need some nuts from a steel wheel to secure them in place. These nuts come with the adapters, but I'm not going to use those, and instead you need a new set of Ranger Rover Sport or Discovery 3 nuts. These ones here, which hold the wheel in place. And so for about £30 or so, get a set of nuts, 30 or 40, and I think somewhere in here, here we are. We also have a set of locking wheel nuts for the same size. This comes with a key. These are about £20 a set. You can get a whole combination set of nuts and locking nuts for 4 wheels for £60 UK, which is what I did with these. Be careful you don't get the nuts that talk about 60-degree slant on there. You'll see in the adverts they'll say those are for aftermarket wheels and not for the genuine Land Rover wheels, which is what I have here. So these were taken from a Discovery 3, bought them on eBay, £300 or so, wheel and tyre combination, nice buy. And they near enough have the same rolling radius and diameter as these original BF Goodridges. I think actually when I calculate it, they're about an inch less in diameter, which is not a great deal. These ones were bigger than the standard ones on the Discovery1 anyhow, so these probably take it back to closer to the original Discovery1 tyres. It fits nicely from the side-on view, but the problem, which we'll soon see, is that they stick out about an inch compared to the previous tyres. So what we'll see later is the fitment of some liners that just go around the inside of the arch just to bring this edge out somewhat, to allow the bodywork to at least cover the tread of the tyre. It used to be an MOT issue where the tyre is sticking out more than the bodywork. Not so much anymore. Various different discussions on the internet about it. Some say that the wheels shouldn't stick out any more than, I think it's 30 or 35 millimeters, which probably is not quite the case here. A little bit close perhaps, but also some people talk about not showing the tread when you're looking from above. Either way, although it's probably not illegal and certainly not an MOT issue anymore, you might get some policeman pulling you over and at least querying that particular regulation. So it's probably best to fit some wheel arch liners anyhow. Also helps keep the mud off the bodywork. You can see with the previous styles there's quite a lot of mud that's splattered up. It'd be nice to have some mud flaps, but the line that we're going to use, which is also sold on eBay, it's called I think a wheel arch flare kit or strip or something. Maybe it's a strip of polypropylene 5 inches wide. It seems to have quite good reviews on eBay, and we'll see how that fitting of that goes in a minute, but hopefully I can bring it down to provide a little bit of mud protection as well. So next we'll look at fitting the tyre and fitting the adapters. So here we are on our way to fitting the adapters and wider wheels, the more modern Discovery 3 wheels. Taking the previous spacers off, actually builds up a little bit of corrosion where the aluminium is touching the steel, and previously had a little bit of paint on it, so it needs a good scraping off. It's just with a nice flat edged chisel. Scrape all the corrosion off, which I've done already on there. Prevent further corrosion, I've just put a little bit of engine oil on a rag, rubbed it over the steel, stop it rusting. Here's the adapters, like I say, you can buy on eBay. Quite nicely made. Fits so. So I would take, and do take, a lot of care to very slowly, well first of all make sure the nuts are clean, but also very slowly and gradually tighten up the nuts, because the whole wheel balancing of your new tyres is dependent on good centralisation of this adapter onto the hub. And with the old style hubs from the Discovery1, the way that, in this case the adapter, but originally the way that the original wheels would be centred would be via the nuts. You see that they're all tapered. Wheels would be tapered, and here the adapters are tapered. So what you want is for each nut to contribute equally to the centering of the hub, to make sure it's got a good chance of being well centered. And hopefully with the new wheels they should, after being balanced correctly, be better centered on the hub, because all modern wheels are centered by this central spigot, whereas the previous wheels had to be centered by the nuts on the wheel balancing machine. A lot of wheel and tyre shops nowadays just balance the wheel using a central conical whatever hub on their balancing machine, which is not strictly speaking correct for tyres that should be centralised on the nuts. But with fitting this adapter, The wheels are now centralised by the spriget, so if they're balanced on the central hole, they should have good balancing when put on the car. So we can either use these standard steel wheel nuts or the longer version, which are actually a little bit more secure because they stick out a bit more. The wheel sits here, so there's very little room to get a socket on the nuts, whereas these ones, being a lot shorter, if we have a look on the other wheel, there's a vague possibility that you could get a wrench and a socket in this space here and undo the nuts and take the wheel off with the adapter. And so I'll change these ones to the longer nuts, I think, which not only look a bit better but also are a bit more secure. So I started putting these ones off, so I'll just take these off and swap them over. That's off, and hopefully in the future we won't have any wheel balancing problems now that the wheel's going to be centralised by the central spigot. And as I mentioned before, don't forget you're putting Discovery1 or Ranger Rover Sport wheels on. Use this additional spigot ring spacer to take up the very slight gap or difference in size between the two spigots. That fits on like that, and then we can fit the Discovery1 wheels. Without the ring, that would be okay for Discovery2 wheels, such as the Comet alloys, which are standard fitment on the Discovery2. Make sure it's nice and flat, able to move. That one's already centralised to some extent. And also tighten them in a pattern where you alternate from opposite sides. Make sure they're all evenly tightened and therefore evenly centralised. Just feel the adapter movement hopefully going down. Here we go, that's gone down as we tighten. I'll do this opposite one, I think. Yes, there's the additional security benefit here that even if you could get in a spanner inside the wheel spokes to undo these nuts, due to the small amount of gap you've got between the wheel and the nut, there's no way that you could actually remove the nut from the stud. Gradually increase the torque. 95 pound-foot is standard torque on these wheels. So I'll just gradually work up. Give it a little clean. And it fits the Discovery1 wheels. Lift the tyre up onto the holes and onto the spigot. Check that hold on our knees. Check that is sitting nice and central. Seems to be. Turns easily on the sprigot. And let's try and turn it enough so we can get a nut in there. The nut fits in the hole. Should be able to hand tighten it if it's on correctly. A little wiggle a bit more. So fitting wheel adapters to the front of the car went fine. See the adapter hopefully in there. Hope that comes out on the camera. Nice looking wheels. With these adapters and with these hubs, they're standard on a V8 Discovery1, which is what I have here, but I think they might be the slightly stronger hub version or heavy duty compared to some versions. And for this type of adapter from eBay, they all seem to be the same from what I've seen from the pictures, then you've got a little bit of a problem with it not quite fitting. As you can see, there's a small gap, a varying small gap between the adapter and the hub, just of 2 or 3 millimeters, and that is caused by the heads of these studs being a little bit too thick, and they're fouling on these bolts on the hub. It's useful to have a gauge to measure the depth, so measure the depth at that and then compare it with this hub. See, it just fouls. Distance is just not quite enough. So 2 options: you can grind off that little edge of the stud, which is okay. It's still quite a lot of strength. The metal here is very thick. See how thick it is, and so the stud is held quite nicely in the aluminium. A little bit of shave of a millimetre or 2 of the stud probably not going to make a huge amount of difference, but to save hacking around with the adapter, instead we'll just angle grind about half off the not the whole head of the bolt obviously, but just again a couple of millimeters from half of the bolt. I'm actually going to do it in place. It's slightly easier than taking them off. Heat's not really a problem because it's dissipated by all this metal of the hub, and they have already been tightened, and avoids upsetting the thread locking compound that was used on these bolts. So just going to cut those down a little bit, and that'll then allow it to fit. Right, that's one done. So still enough of the bolt left so you can get a good hold with the socket still. Just takes a couple of mil off the part that interacts with the studs in the adapters. So we'll do that all the way around, and then we'll find the adapter will fit properly. So there we've done all of the bolts. Don't believe it's weakened the bolts significantly. And now we find the adapter fits nice and flush. Look for any gaps between the adapter and the hub. Once that's centralised by the bolts, and say take care to centralise the adapter on the hub by gradually tightening up the nuts. And yeah, that now seems to fit correctly. Alright, here's a little tip for removing aluminium wheel spacers. If you had them on previously, like I did. These are inch wide spacers, and often the problem is you'll get corrosion of the aluminium, which makes it stick to the iron hub. Now the normal way to do it will obviously be take off all the nuts and try and break the seal between them, right, going all the way around like so, which may work. The other much easier way of doing it is to put the nuts back on a few turns, like so. And now when you put the wheel back on and tighten the nuts up, it'll push the hub back and pull the alloy wheel spacer out and pull it off sufficiently so you can then get a screwdriver behind the adapter and lever it off. See, the wheel is sticking out from the, might be able to see that, from the adapter. A little gap because of those nuts sticking out. And then as we tighten up the wheel, it should pull the adapter off with it. So let's socket fits. And just to speed things up, I'll use the air tool. There you can see, hopefully, I'll bring this down. You can see the adapter has now been pulled off the hub, and the adapter's moved closer to the wheel. So, job done quite easily. Then we'll just take the nuts off, and there we can see, or rather, there we can see, that we've got the adapter separated from the hub. Now just remove these last few nuts. They're only about, probably about 2 or 3 turns on the nuts is enough. Give them enough grip on the thread without stripping the thread, but allowing them to poke out enough from the adapter so the adapter gets pulled off. There we go. Nuts off. And then we can get a screwdriver, or in this case a chisel, behind the adapter. Gradually work your way around. One of the other reasons they stick is as you do the wheel nuts up, if you've got the tapered wheel nuts, which I'm to have here, if you can see that, then it squashes the aluminium up against the stud. So it makes it a very tight fit. There we go. See a little bit of corrosion where it's all gone white. Everything you need to do, and what I've got a chisel, is clean up the hub, and then get a tissue and spread a little bit of oil over it to stop it rusting and stop it corroding next time. So that's a little tip for getting rid of the wheel spacers. Right, here's a useful tip if you're wanting to tighten up the nuts and you've got both sides of the car jacked up, so even with the handbrake on, the wheels are going to be turning because the other wheel is also turning the opposite direction. Here's a tip to apply the brakes. Turn on the ignition, jam a piece of wood on the brake pedal. If you've got electric seats, use the electric seats, push forward on the brakes, and you've got a nice bit of brake pressure, hopefully. Then we can tighten the nuts up because the brakes are on hard. So, quite useful. The next job after fitting the adapters is to extend the wheel arches slightly. So I've gone for these universal wheel arch flare add-ons made of a bit of plastic. And decided that the amount that needs to stick out is about that, just under 1 centimetre at the top. And I'm going to leave the details of exactly how we fit those for the next video. You'll be able to see it on my channel. This video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to stop it here and we'll come back to that later. Okay, thanks for watching, and here are the final results of the car with the wheels. So here's the new wider, more modern tyres on from the Ranger Rover Sport / Discovery 3. Wider, more grip. What the 255 / 50 R19. Make the car look a bit more modern, I think. A little bit nicer looking than standard 16-inch ones. Ride comfort hasn't really taken a hit at all. First impressions are pretty similar to the previous tyres I had on. Quite look nice. Okay, thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out my other video on how to fit the wheel arch extenders / wheel arch flares, whatever you call them. You'll find it on my channel. Come in handy now, search for that name and you'll find them. Thanks for watching.